Act 1 Introduction. What would you do if you knew how to save the planet from climate change? Type Y examines the problem. Type 2 looks at what we are doing about it, and Type 3 looks at what we would need to do to solve the entire problem. But first, let's review the problem. Act 2, the problem. Section: the failure of carbon dioxide. Climate scientists warned us decades ago we needed to avoid a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase. Instead, we breached it in 2023. We are warming rapidly. Emissions should be near zero. Instead, they are at their highest. We failed to transition to a green economy. The prisoner's dilemma problem. Harm comes from carbon dioxide emitted by 8 billion people. One person's emissions seem irrelevant. Each person wants others to reduce. This is a prisoner's dilemma. Section: the failure of decarbonization. Decarbonization data shows slow progress. Global energy without carbon dioxide has only increased slightly. This includes all energy, not just electricity. Worldwide progress is slow, from 14 to 18% in a decade. Full decarbonization would take 200 years. US, Europe and China have long timelines. Social pressure alone won't solve the climate problem. The acceleration problem is caused by self-reinforcing feedback loops. We're observing acceleration in thawing permafrost, ocean current reduction and melting sea ice. Acceleration is real, confirmed by actual measurements. The next 30 years will see significantly more change. Reducing carbon dioxide emissions won't fix this. The acceleration problem is too great. If carbon dioxide reduction was Plan A, what is Plan B? Plan B is to reflect more sunlight back into space. This would cool the planet slightly. What if we don't do Plan B? Plan C? Plan C is experiencing dramatic changes over the next 30 years. This involves food shortages, mass migration, etc. All of this might seem complicated and overwhelming. In theory, a new laboratory could be set up to tackle the climate problem. Transitioning to a green economy is likely to cost $100 trillion globally. Spending $100 billion on a new lab to save trillions is reasonable. This would employ 40,000 scientists and engineers. What might a new lab do to save us from climate change? We'll talk more about this shortly in our film. Act 3, reflecting sunlight. Plan B involves reflecting sunlight back into outer space. This new field requires research. How can we reflect 1% of sunlight back into space? Sunlight already reflects off man-made pollution, specifically sulfur. This could be key in solving climate change. Act 1 Tipping Points section. Introduction. Plan A, decarbonization failed as we breached the 1.5 degree threshold in 2023. Now we face Plan C, runaway climate change. Plan B, reflecting sunlight, is unpopular and ignored. Thus, we are heading towards significant planetary changes. This is difficult to discuss because it is upsetting and hard to comprehend. Many still believe Plan A is viable due to frequent decarbonization news. Despite these challenges, we must press forward. Let's review tipping points. Tipping points are additional sources of global warming, adding to the effects of carbon dioxide. Section: North Pole Sea ice. North Pole sea ice, when melted, causes sunlight absorption by seawater, increasing global temperatures. 5 million square kilometers of sea ice, about half the size of the US, could melt, raising global temperatures by 0.6 degrees Celsius. This would add to the 1.5 degrees of warming from 150 years of emissions. Global warming would accelerate due to this tipping point and others. Thawing permafrost releases methane, further increasing temperatures. More heat causes more permafrost to melt, creating a self-reinforcing cycle. Section: tipping points are like dominoes. About a dozen tipping points can increase global temperatures activated by heat. Tipping points activate each other like dominoes. Section 10, an insane sequence of events. North Pole. Sea ice melting will warm the Arctic, causing Greenland ice to melt. This will dump fresh water into the Atlantic, reducing ocean currents. These currents move heat from the equator to Europe. Their loss will make the equator warmer and Europe colder. This will lead to less food production and mass migration. A quickly changing planet is a bad planet. All of this sounds terrible, and it is. However, a reasonable path forward exists, which we will now review. Act 5, the Climate Change Solution section. Introduction: solving the climate problem at the lowest cost to society. This is not being done, yet could be done. Exploring the concept of a climate plan. Lawmakers need a detailed plan. This does not exist, yet could be developed. A list of decarbonization initiatives. Estimating cost, carbon reduction and cost per ton. Government-employed energy economists can estimate these values. They are somewhat trusted by lawmakers. To achieve majority support, the guiding principle would need to meet the satisfaction of both liberals and conservatives. Survey data indicates 67% of Americans are concerned about climate change. Bipartisan support is achievable. Lawmakers on both sides suggest a guiding principle. Decarbonize at the lowest cost to society without taxes or subsidies. Taxes and subsidies lack broad political support due to several issues. These include deficit spending, economic efficiency, and fraudulent offsets. Requirements do not have these problems. Many lawmakers ask, why spend $200 to reduce emissions by 1 ton of carbon dioxide when we can do it for $20? This implies they want to decarbonize in lowest cost order. A climate plan would be influenced by policy options. Government economists could build a website to generate a climate plan based on policy options. Many conservatives support green energy if it follows a lowest cost approach. Texas, a conservative state, produces more wind power than any other US state. Many climate initiatives are not effective or cost efficient. People sell climate to make money, and the impact of their efforts is rarely quantified. Government energy economists are needed to evaluate initiatives and help craft a climate plan. Reflecting sunlight. Climate observations show touching is easier than not touching. Conduct reflectivity R&D while public opinion evolves. Start with small-scale projects, then large-scale implementations. Prepare to panic.